Okay, so this is video 2, and in this video we're gonna talk a little bit about the tokens and making character sheets and associating those tokens with the character sheets, things like that. But it occurs to me that there are two things which I didn't mention in the last video, which I want to address right now. Um, Now the first thing is that I talked about the GM overlay layer, but I didn't really talk about what I could do. I kind of gave a hint as to what you could do with it. Um, and I talked about, traps and nodes and whatever. But I didn't actually demonstrate that, so I'm going to do that really quickly right now. So, um, as I mentioned, anything that's on the GM layer is not going to be visible. So let's imagine that, so we're back on the map layer. Let's imagine that this guy is not actually visible right now. He's for some reason, I don't know, he's, whatever, he's cloaked or who knows. Or you don't exactly want to reveal him yet. You don't want to reveal that he's there. So we can move him to the GM layer, and now you can see he's a little bit dimmer, and this is how we know that he's on the GM layer. He's not really visible. Um, and indeed, when we try to interact, well, that's interacting with the pentagram underneath, right? But we can't actually interact with him. In fact, all we're doing is interacting with that background map. So he's well and truly on the GM layer. Now, uh, as I said, nothing can be seen, so it's a great place for notes. Now let's imagine that, for example, we actually have a trap there. So one of the things we could do, for example, let's see, maybe I've got a trap here. Let's go look. Wrong section. Let's go look for maybe a trap of some sort. So maybe in front of each one of these steps is something like what do we have here? Fan trap, trapdoor, pit trap. Let's say there's a pit trap there, something like that. So I'm just going to drag that on, and maybe it's a pretty big trap, so we're going to throw it there. Now notice I'm on the GM layer, so it's on the GM layer. The players aren't going to be able to see that, and actually we can demonstrate that by, let's go back to objects and tokens. Let's go grab Shalelu. She's over here now. Let's see what she can see. It's all within her light radius. In fact, let's just make it here. Okay, doesn't help. That doesn't work, apparently. You need to be on the actual, you need to rejoin as a player. So, again, let's do that really quickly. And it's coming. It's opening planar transports. There you go. And as you can see, right, that person is gone. The trap is invisible. But we know that the minute Shalelu steps on that area, it's going to activate the traps. Okay, we're going to go back. So bear with me as we go through the loading and unloading of various things. Right. The other thing I actually forgot to mention was the how exactly I'm actually doing this. How can I actually see when you're rejoining as a player? How can I actually see, right? And I'll explain that when we get to talk about more about tokens. All right. So, all right. So, um, so the trap layer, obviously, sorry, the GM layer overlay, very, very good for this kind of thing. And then when you just wanted to reveal it, for example, let's say Shalelu activated the trap. It's very simple to just go to the right-click layer and click token layer, and suddenly it's there. Now we've got a problem though. Now this trap is kind of covering. So the Roll20 environment uses, it's kind of a very, very simple layering system. In fact, it's so simple that you've really got two options. You can have as many layers as you want, but you have no way to select each individual layer. The only thing you can do is bring things forward or bring things back. So we're now on the, so if we go to the objects and tokens layer, this is now on the objects and token layer. I can right click and to back, and now it's behind. This can be problematic. I talked about in the last video. I talked a little bit about dressing up the set, dressing up the map. It can be problematic. So you need to be a little bit strategic in how you place things down, or really just sort of fiddle around with bringing things up, bringing things back. I find it's generally best just, especially if you're working on the map layer, to always just send things to the back. That way, even if you have items which are on there and they kind of seem to disappear, that's because they're behind the map. You can always just click anywhere on the map and send it back. It's not going to do that here. I'm on the wrong layer for that, but you get the idea. All right. The other thing that you can do with the GM layer is, of course, make notes, and that's actually what. So we're back on the GM layer. We see here on the drawing tool we have the shapes, freehand, lines, and then the text. So here you can make text. I like to choose a nice big font. Let's say 22. Let's make white text because that's the most visible. Arial, whatever. I use Contrail 1 just because I like it, but you can use whatever. And let's imagine that we can put some information about this trap here. So I'm on the map and I'm on the GM layer, and I'll find a space maybe somewhere here, and I can just start typing. So let's say that that's a trap. It's a to get by it. It's a reflex DC 20, right? And if you fail, it does 1d10 plus 5 damage. Now you can't do anything like rolls. These are just dumb notes. When you're finished, you can just click somewhere else, and that'll open up a new text, or click on this, and you can actually move this around, and it'll snap to like the center or something like that. It'll snap to something, and that's a good way to do it, right? A little bit hard to see here sometimes, but this is a good way. For example, if you've got different areas and you have some flavor text that you want to describe, so we could make some text here, for example. And let's say this is it's Temple 1, T1, right? It's on your map. It's known as T1, so that's your T1 area. Let's say this is the atrium or the entrance, so we call that T2, right? And that's how it's listed on in your adventure. This thing here of special interest, so maybe that's T3, right? So you have all of these notes here. These are things for you to see. The player is not going to be able to see that, and that's just a really quick way for you to utilize that GM layer, that GM overlay, to kind of give you information that you need sort of on the fly, or just that you need it immediately. Okay, so let's talk about making tokens. Now, I'll talk about that other thing about how I as a GM can create a token to act as a player, so that when I join the players, I see what the players see. We'll talk about that as we're going through this this part of the tutorial, but let's do that. So first things first, you're going to need to have some token art. So every single token that you drop in, oops, wrong tool. Every single token you have drop in will have this kind of thing. We've seen this before, but we have bars, and if you want it to show up as an actual bar like that, you'll need to fill in the basically the current value and the max value. All right, so we call this hit points, and she's got 130 hit points and 130, so she's at full health. So we can see the bar is filled. The second bar isn't something that's a scalar. It doesn't require us to measure it. It's not going to go up and down, nor do we need to track it. But we can put it. We can put in her AC. This is her AC, and that'll show up in the blue circle. All right. Same with her speed. She's got speed 40. Right. Oh, that's weird. That's why I was doing that. Okay. We'll talk about all this stuff in a moment. So let's talk about who needs what. Okay. So most games will have, a sort of a number of different sort of levels, I suppose, of importance to their NPCs and their tokens. You'll have maybe player characters and sort of main NPCs. NPCs or PCs for whom you want to have stats and abilities and that kind of thing. In Pathfinder, it tends more towards that. Almost everything has a stat or something associated, but some of them do not. Okay. In a game like Firefly, for example, you have your main actors. That's going to be all your PCs, and maybe the villain of some sort. Maybe, and for that you want a fully statted out character sheet. You might have a special guest or something, or maybe you'll have somebody who's not a main character, a supporting cast, and maybe they too will have a a character sheet associated with them, and then maybe you've also got extras. In Pathfinder, we might call those mooks or things that don't really matter and they don't have a character sheet. To make that first kind, that's pretty easy. So I'll put a link in the description below, but you probably already know rolladvantage.com token stamp. This is a fantastically easy way to make tokens. All you do is you take this stage, now take this page, open it up, and you're gonna drag a character. You're gonna drag a picture. So I've got this picture of GW2 character that I found online. I like the look of it. I'm gonna use it for, and I use it for my Mesmer, but whatever. We throw that in there. You make some adjustments, something like that, and you've got a nice token. You see the output on the right side. I like to just make all my borders white. It's just a thing. Just makes it sort of pop out, and then you're just going to download, and that's it. Right? And then you go back, and you've got this token here. Now, where it's going to save, it's dependent on you. I've got these already pre-saved, so I'm just going to drag. It's going to upload. A little bit big. That's because the actual file size is big. You're just going to shrink her down to fit into a circle, and there you go. You're done with the token. That's it. It's got exactly the same thing, right? It's got all this stuff here. It's not associated with anything yet, but that's okay. So this could be for like an NPC, which you're not intending that an NPC to get into a fight, or if it does, you can just make stuff up on the fly. So this could be just an informant in a bar. Could be like a friendly, helpful NPC who's not intended to be into combat or anything like that. This is the easiest kind of NPC to make. There could be just a bunch of peasants running away from a Cyclops, right? They're not intending to fight. And if they do get into a fight, any hit on them is just going to kill them, right? Makes it easy. Okay. So that's the first kind. Let's say you've also got you've got an enemy. All right. So what you're going to do is, an enemy that you want to, he's a unique enemy. He's kind of a boss or something. So let's make that. Let's make an Etten. So again, I've got my Etten picture. I'm going to just drag it in here, and just adjust it so it looks good, and we see the output. There you go. We've already done the border, so we don't have to worry. And we're just going to download. Boom, it's done. Go to where you've downloaded. Drag it in. And we've got one. He's a little bit big here, so let's shrink him down to a more standard size. He's a large creature, so he's 10 foot by 10 foot. Now this guy we actually want statted. Let's say he's the boss of this temple. So what do? First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our journal section. All right, it's the one that looks like the newspaper article. Now you can order all this stuff however you'd like. You can simply add, or you could right-click. Oops, that doesn't work there. But you could right-click somewhere here, and you could on one of these folders, like I've got tools, some summons, some spell effects, and my information, the PCs, etc. So you could, for example, add a mob. Don't look. You could, for example, right-click and add a handout. So let's do that. We're going to do that somewhere else. Let's just put that in the NPC section. We're going to add, we've got a handout, a character, or, for example, you could make another subfolder. You can do that up here as well, but that's going to put it just sort of on this, on the biggest level, the highest level of your sort of folder structure. So I've got, this thing, combat reflexes. Why is this here? That's weird. Not sure why that's there. Let's delete that. Okay. I've got tools that anybody can use and anybody can see. Some summons that specific players can see, that only specific players can see. Some spell effects that I can just simply drop in as needed, or that player can drop in as needed. And then other things. So it's very easy. At the bottom, you're going to see I've got archived characters and archived handouts. Just like I mentioned earlier with the maps, the less congested this section is, the better. And by archiving, you don't lose it. And the good thing is you can still access them through things that are active here. I'll explain that a little bit more when I'm talking about creating this adventure journal thingy, handbook, whatever, because it's really more relevant there. But for now, just know that even though they're archived, they're of course not gone, and you can still access them, but these are not loaded at the time the Roll20 environment is loaded, and that makes things a lot faster. So archive like hell. It's just a very, very good thing to do. Okay, so let's talk about giving this Etten here a character. So I'm going to make a new character. So right click on whatever folder, and we're going to add a character, and it's going to spawn some sort of random name. Now, when you open this, the second character sheet, this is actually defined by the settings, the game settings. Go all the way back out to the main game page. Click on the gear, go to the game settings, and it'll say you can choose which character. When you're making a PC, that's a little bit different. Ultimately, associating a PC with a token is exactly the same as an NPC, but when we're making an NPC, it's easier. This is going to be information specific for Pathfinder. So if you are not interested in this, just jump ahead. So I'm not going to have timestamps or anything like that. So you're just going to have to play around with that. But anyway, you can do a couple of things here. But if you're making an NPC, you're specifically going to click on that. Okay. Now it's an NPC, and you got all sorts of stuff in there, whatever. Click on the settings to close that, and you've got this NPC sheet. Now, for Pathfinder, this is now wonderful, because what you can do is you can go to the compendium. You can type in, let's look for an Etten. We've got an Etten, and you can drag it, and when it goes yellow, it's going to autofill. Now, then all you do is parse. So while this is parsing, it'll create. That'll disappear. It's not gone. It's all right here. You can see it there. Right. But now you've got everything you need for the Etten. All the attacks are set up. All the saving throw macros are all set up. You've got all of the attacks listed. Everything here. Very, very useful. Some things are not covered, like whether it's piercing or bludgeoning or slashing. But whatever. I mean, you can just quickly type in a P, and of course it's a flail, so it's going to be B. Whatever. None of that's really all that important, though. Okay, but the main thing is, that's it. You're done. A custom NPC obviously is going to require you to manually fill in a lot of this information. And of course, if you are doing something like applying a template to a tool like an Etten, you're going to have to change this information before you can parse it. Right? So once again, you've got two options here. If it's sort of a stock NPC, or an NPC where it's easier to make small adjustments to it rather than filling in this entire block, entire sort of character sheet, then find the base version, drag it in, make what changes you have to, and those are going to be to these numbers up here, and then parse it, and it'll all be done. Otherwise, just close this down. Don't worry about it. Just start filling things in, and it'll work that way. Now, you may not have everything here. You might think, oh, well, there's some things that are missing. That's what this mode button is for. If you close it, that will actually shrink down some of the more sort of calculation intensive fields. So you want to expand that to make sure that you can see everything. All right, and that's it. That's you're done kind of with this with the filling in of this character sheet, and that's done. The name hasn't changed. The name will change once you've saved it. Now, once you've created a character sheet, you need to associate it with that token. So, make sure you've got it selected, and you're going to go to Edit, and you're going to, so you're going to see that's got it's got the name, in whose journals it shows up in, and of course, if this is an NPC, you're going to have nothing inside here. You're going to have nothing. Can be edited and controlled by, right? If it's just the GM, then nothing. You could add tags if you want, if you really want to be able to search for things, or if you want to replicate an entire bestiary. For now, all we're just going to do is push save. Don't worry about this default token or avatar stuff yet. All right, let's save changes. All right, so it's saved. Now he's got the Etten, and we can see he's got an Etten name right here. All right, so that's all done. Let's close this down for a second, and if you don't have it set to pop outs, if you just have them sort of showing up within the Roll20 framework, you can just click on the top header, and that'll just shrink. Okay. So now we're going to begin the process of associating that character sheet with this token. And we're going to do so in such a way that you can always, for example, have this Etten, make it once, and you can just drag it in there anytime you need an Etten. Let's say you need 5 Ettens, you're just going to drag it in. Now, if I drag this in now, nothing's going to happen. I get this stupid little thing, right? Not very helpful for us. Doesn't do anything. So let's delete that. All right, so let's click on this button here, on this character, on this token, and you're going to double click, and the first thing you're going to do is represents character. Who does it represent? It's going to represent an Etten. Done. Right, and suddenly it's now we have a couple of bars here. Now here we have to be careful. If this is a boss NP, you can go ahead and sort of scroll down through all of the attributes that are associated with this character sheet, and it's big. There's a lot of stuff here to go through, but it's mostly alphabetical, and so we're going to click on his HP, and he's got some HP. And it's going to basically query the character sheet, pull the information, and autofill. So this character's got 65 hit points. This thing's got 65 hit points. Our blue bar here for us represents the armor class, so we're going to find that, and we're going to click on AC. All right, and that's done. And the last one is going to have, the last thing is going to be its speed. So we're going to go and find speed. Now speed is one of those things where you're going to go down. It's going to go down all the way to the end of the alphabet, and then it's going to start again with lowercase stuff. A little bit annoying, but whatever. And speed happens to be in this lowercase section. So we're going to go all the way down, find speed. Find speed. Find speed. There you go. And speed base. Okay, and now we've got this Etten. Okay, and that is now saved. Now we can go back to the character sheet. We're gonna, this doesn't matter, remember, this is just information. This is bio info, doesn't matter. And this, again, all of those abilities that you saw from that drop-down list, again, we're not touching any of this stuff. Let's go back to the character sheet. We're just gonna go to the edit button, and now with our token selected, use selected token. All right, save changes. So that's going to show up and save changes, and it'll refresh, whatever. Now we've got these tokens. It's going to, every time you drag and drop a token in there, it's going to spawn a new one. You'll notice that it's spawning at the right size. You'll notice that all the things are filled out. Oh wow, it's getting slow here. All the things are filled out properly. Right, so very, very useful. All right, let's get rid of all that. Okay. But there's a problem. Actually, I'm not going to get rid of all that because I need to show you something. So when I was doing this, you may have noticed that these auras filled in automatically. That's actually part of an API that I'm running, which automatically heals, and the effect that you're going to see is also part of the API. You're not going to see that unless you happen to have that API installed, and for that, of course, you need a pro subscription. All right. So this problem here. Let's say we got 3 Ettens, and even though he's supposed to be a boss, I don't know, for some reason there's 3 of them here. Like maybe it's these 3 are all on an encounter. Watch what happens when I do damage to one of them. So he's got 65 hit points. He's going to take, let's say, Shalelu shoots him, hits him for a nice amount of damage. Shalelu hits her for a nice amount of damage, and he takes 20 points. Minus 20. Boom. Look at that. They've all taken that damage. That's not very useful, right? Because, unfortunately, because they are all tied to the same character sheet. Let's take a look. Because they are, what's happened is any changes that are made to this token are sent back to the character sheet because they are linked to this attribute, and then it's returned back to every single other token that is associated. So how do you prevent that? Well, this is how you actually make mooks. So what you actually do is, once you've got a token, once you've got set up your default token, so let's delete these all again. Let's give him some hit points back. Let's just make him full health again. And he's set. Alright. So what you're going to do here is, once you've got that, once you've filled in all of these points, you're just going to go back and go to none. None. And, of course, none. So, I mean, if you happen to know these numbers already, then feel free to just type them in. If you happen to know he had 65 hit points, you can just type 65, 65. If you knew his AC was 18, if you knew his speed was 40, all that stuff, you can do that. Otherwise, look it up and then switch it back to none. Okay, save changes. Now, remember when we chose the default token? That's kind of like a snapshot. Those changes aren't reflected here on the character sheet. So let's look at the character sheet. You can open the character sheet by clicking on this in the journal section and then double clicking on the name, or you can shift double click the token and that'll open up the character sheet as well. So going to edit, and now we're going to remove the previous one. Remember, the previous one had all of those values, all those bars linked. We're going to remove that. Yes. And now we're going to use this new one. Now look what has happened. All right, so let that save. Now we've got more ettins here, whatever. And when this guy takes 20 points of damage, none of the rest of them do. Right? That's because those values are no longer linked to the character sheet. But all the other attributes, things like attacks, those are all still linked. So this guy will still be able to attack. So he's gonna attack, and he's got his 2 flails, and he does his flails. Blah blah blah. Done. Right. This one's gonna attack. Right. He's got his own. Maybe this one's gonna do a perception check. So he's gonna go and see. And maybe this one's gonna do a saving throw. So there's gonna be checks, and he's got a saving throw, and he's gonna do a fortitude check. All right. Easy stuff. Right. All individual. They all still reference the sheet, but things like up here, things that we track through the tokens, like damage, those are not affected. Now. You guys know that there is, for the Pathfinder sheet, a section for buffs and conditions, or buffs and debuffs, I guess. Buffs and debuffs. Those you can't use. The reason, of course, is that if you make a change to the character sheet, that change gets sent to everybody. So if only this one, for example, was blinded, all the other ones would be blinded too, and would have those associated negative effects associated with being blinded or whatever. So for that kind of thing, it's just easier to track individually. Each of these icons can have something like, you could just choose something. Maybe he's blind, right? Easy enough to do that. All right, and then just know I've got a tracker system available. Tracker system sort of enabled through the APIs, but it's a little bit fiddly. But whatever. Okay, so that's how you create NPCs that have their own character sheets. And how you create mooks, things that don't necessarily require a character sheet, and how you create, just random mobs that you want your enemies to fight. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to cover is assigning who can control what. So let's take a look here at Shillelagh. And specifically, we have some information here where Shillelagh and Usana is where this token represents Shillelagh, and the nameplate shows nameplate, so I can see it. And then we can give some player permission so that the players can also see the nameplate, the various bars, or in this case the various circles, should they decide to click on it, and any auras that need to be seen. Shillelagh also has vision. Now, in my current game, Shillelagh actually had dark vision, or in the game, she had dark vision from a magic item, but she's an elf, so she's actually just got low light vision. So I had a random. So we had this setting where we would just do something like where players can see about maybe 15 feet around them with dim light, and they can only see actually about 3 feet in sort of bright light when they don't have any kinds of torches on. If that was the case, we would have all players see light, and she also has sight. This needs to be checked for that player to be dropped onto a map with dynamic lighting, and for that token to be able to actually see anything around. So let's make that quick change. All right, and then suddenly, it's gotten a lot darker, and let's sort of see what she sees. Much better, right? She can only see up to 15 feet. It represents, the murky darkness of combat, and she can only actually see brightly about 3 feet. Right, so that's a pretty good representation of her walking around. She can just make out the ettin there, but nothing specific. Right? Things like that. Okay, pretty good. Oops. Of course, she's also an elf, and that's where this multiplier comes in. So if, for example, she's an elf and she has dark vision means that all light sources are amplified by a factor of 2, right? So she can see twice as far. So if she's got bright light, it works out twice as far. If she's in dim light, she can see out twice as far. So you're going to type in 2. Uh, you wouldn't change these figures here, but now you can see it. So you can see a lot more, but you can also see that that 3-foot circle is now kind of come into something like a 6-foot circle, more or less, right? It works very well. All right. Um, that's how you would control the lighting on a token, on a token like this. Now, in order to assign that token to a player, okay, we're going to open up our character sheet, and we're going to go to Edit, and this is how we create a essentially a GM NPC, a GM player for you to sort of be able to jump into the GM to rejoin the game as a PC. You need to make sure that, well, here it doesn't matter. You can put in all players, or you can just put in your own name, and then it can be controlled and edited by you, right? And it's going to show up, and then you're just going to save those changes. That way, whenever you jump in as a player, because you're now a player, you have a token and a character sheet assigned to you, and that's how you can double check these things. So, right, and that is really basically it for tokens, and making these tokens. Yeah. So in the next video, I'm just going to talk a little bit about, I guess, really about music and macros. Yeah, we'll talk about music and macros in the next one. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.